Good morning. I hope you're doing great. Welcome back in another podcast. Let's consider it as a podcast, but maybe it gets shorter or it gets longer. We're not sure, but this is just to get you updated about things that I've been working on recently. I've been trying to discover books about finance and how people can improve their financial status in society and create the wealth and being wealthy. Maybe this is something different from the normal kind of education books that I've been doing, but exploring other territories is very important. I've been exploring AI and how it is useful in education. And I've been working on understanding and getting to know more the psychology of money. And that's where I landed my hand on the book of Psychology of Money. And I've been reading the book on Kindle Paperwhite. This is one of the best inventions of probably 21st century. This is an e-ink or digital ink a notebook that helps you read as if you are reading on a piece of paper. Now, it is really, really, really good, and it is really fascinating to see the quality of font, and you can make it bigger. Actually, if you do this kind of pinching of the screen, you can see it gets bigger, and you can get the chance to see the font of it and enjoy reading the books. And it's really fascinating experience. So this is the kind of book that the book I'm giving you a synopsis of, summary of, is The Psychology of Money. And the book is really interesting in a way that makes you just reconsider everything that you know about life, about how you deal with people, and about money in particular. And in this review, I will walk you through 100 highlights. Well, actually, there are more than 100 highlights that are sentences, paragraphs, quotes that the writer used in this book that I really, really, really found eye-opening and useful for you to understand and to get a sense of what's going on in the life of finance, money, psychology. And it's a great mix of money and psychology. So getting to know it is really an eye-opening for everyone who is exploring the field of business. He is a person who is into venture capital, a person who is considering the outliers that might occur due to maintaining of his own business. So let's get started. The first one that he says is financial success is not a hard science. It's a soft skill where how you behave is more important than what you know. The second is history never repeats itself. Man always does. The interesting part about this quote in particular is the fact that the writer sheds some light on the book of Outliers by Daniel Kanaman, where he talks about the fact that no matter how many expectations, no matter how many ideas that you have about the variables that might occur, there's always a rogue outlier, one that you have never expected to happen will happen. Every financial decision a person makes sense to them in that moment and checks the boxes they need to check. They tell themselves a story about what they are doing and why they are doing it. Luck and risk are siblings. They're both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual efforts. It is so important to remember when judging success, both your own and others, nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. Maybe it gets worse, maybe it gets better. The accidental impact of actions outside of your control can be more consequential than the ones you consciously take. Point number 7, realizing that not all success is due to hard work, and not all poverty is due to laziness. Keep this in mind when judging people, including yourself. He's also saying studying a specific person can be dangerous because we tend to study extreme examples, the billionaires, the CEOs, or the massive failures that dominate the news. And extreme examples are often the least applicable to other situations, given their complexity. And he's telling us that we should focus more on studying the mainstream, the patterns, and studying the patterns that people usually have or fall into. 9, you'll get closer to actionable takeaways by looking for broad patterns of success and failure. The more common the pattern, the more applicable it might be to your life. Again, you'll get closer to actionable takeaways by looking for broad patterns and success of success and failure. The more common the pattern, the more applicable it might be to your life. Bill Gates once said, "Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose." And he's just giving examples of people who have lost a lot of fortune just because they were not concerned enough about or pessimistic enough to not losing it. I think if I can put one word description for this book, it would be pessimism. In a way that you have to be pessimistic about all the bad things that might happen if I lose this amount of money, and not on all of the things that will happen to me positively if I amass this kind of money or I spend it. Because he's saying in the book I can phrase it in my own words, if you spend all of the money on the good things that you want, you will end up with only the good things that you want, but not the money that you spent on them. The trick when dealing with failure is arranging your financial life in a way that a bad investment here and a missed financial goal there won't wipe you out, so you can keep playing until the odds fall in your favor. Persistence. As much as we are recognizing the role of luck in success, the role of risk means we should forgive ourselves and leave room for understanding when judging failures. He's pushing you to do some calculated risk, because that is the only way you can get around the circumstances of being only doing what you're doing without doing the leap of faith to do crazy, more adventurous, lucrative things in life. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Modern capitalism is a pro at two things: generating wealth and generating envy. Perhaps they go hand in hand. Wanting to surpass your peers can be the fuel for hard work or of hard work. But life isn't any fun without a sense of enough, which is the satisfaction about what you have and trying to create the assets that maintains the flaw of what you have. Happiness, as it said, is just a result minus expectations. The point that the ceiling of social comparison is so high that virtually no one will ever hit it, which means it is a battle that can never be won. So trying to compare yourself to people who are higher than you in terms of wealth is just a lost game. Enough is realizing that the opposite, an insatiable appetite for more, will push you to the point of regret. So just have enough and try to maintain the assets that you have by calculating what you have instead of spending it on things that you'll regretfully be sad about in the future. Reputation is invaluable. Freedom and independence are invaluable. Family and friends are invaluable. Being loved by those who want to love you is invaluable. Happiness is invaluable. And your best shot at keeping these things is knowing when it is time to stop taking the risk that might harm you, might harm them. Knowing when you have enough. I think the summary of this part, or what he is trying to exactly say, is that being so much greedy, because it's all about psychology. The book is a kind of psychology analysis of those people who have a lot of money who lost them, or who have a lot of money who lost it, or those who didn't have any money and they gained it. And the kind of feelings that they have, depending on the comments that they've shared with people in this regard. You don't need tremendous force to create tremendous results. If something compounds, if a little growth serves as the fuel for future growth, a small starting base can lead to results so extraordinary they seem to defy logic. Buffett's fortune isn't due to just being a good investor, but being a good investor since he was literally a child. The point is that what seems like small changes in growth assumptions can lead to ridiculous, impractical numbers. It's about earning pretty good return that you can stick with and which can be repeated for the longest period of time. That's when compounding runs wild. There are a million ways to get wealthy and plenty of books on how to do so. But there's only one way to stay wealthy, some combination of frugality and paranoia. This is probably one of my favorite quotes of the author. And I really think that is just because he's saying that you have to be really so concerned about the money that you have and being frugal and spending only the amount of money that deserves to be spent on the items that you really, really need and not want. Getting money is one thing, and keeping it is another. Very important. Keeping money requires the opposite of taking risk. It requires humility and fear that what you've made can be taken away from you just as fast. Planning is important, but the most important part of every plan is to plan on the plan not going according to the plan. One of my favorite quotes of the book. A plan is only useful if it can survive reality. And a future filled with unknowns is everyone's reality. The more you need specific elements of a plan to be true, the more fragile your financial life becomes. Room for error, often called margin of safety, is one of the most underappreciated forces in finance. It comes in many forms: a frugal budget, flexible thinking, and a loose timeline. Conservative is avoiding a certain level of risk. Margin of safety is raising the odds of success at a given level of risk by increasing your chances of survival. Most of our attention goes to things that are huge, profitable, famous, or influential. When most of what we pay attention to is the result of a tale, it's easy to underestimate how rare and powerful they are. The idea that a few things account for most results is not just true for companies in your investment portfolio. It's also an important part of your own behavior as an investor. Your success as an investor will be determined by your own response to punctuated moments of terror, not the years spent on cruise control. A good definition of an investing genius is the man or woman who can do the average things when all those around them are going crazy. When you accept that tails drive everything in business and finance, you realize that it's normal for lots of things to go wrong, break, fail, and fall. Peter Lynch is one of the best investors of our time. If you're terrific in this business, you're right 6 times out of 10, he once said. Something I've learned from both investors and entrepreneurs is that no one makes good decisions all of the time. The most impressive people are packed full of horrendous ideas that are often acted upon. The good jokes I see on Netflix are the tales that stuck out of a universe of hundreds of attempts. When we pay special attention to our role models' successes, we overlook that their gains came from a small percent of their actions. It is not whether you're right or wrong that is important, George Soros once said, but how much money you make when you're right and how much you lose when you're wrong. The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want is priceless. It is the highest dividend money pays. Doing something you love, dividend means share for or ratio of the things that the money is given to some people based on their efforts. Doing something you love on a schedule you can't control can feel the same as doing something you hate. People like to feel like they are in control, in the driver's seat. When we try to get them to do something, they feel disempowered. Which is about psychology here. Take it from those who have lived through everything. Controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. When you see someone driving a nice car, you rarely think, wow, the guy driving that car is cool. Instead, you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I am cool, which is a selfish psychology thing. You might think you want an expensive car, a fancy watch, and a huge house, but I'm telling you, you don't. What you want is respect and admiration from other people, and you think having expensive stuff will bring it. If respect and admiration are your goal, be careful how you seek it. Humility, kindness, and empathy will bring you more respect than horsepower ever will, which is being humble, being empathetic to people. Wealth is what you don't see. We can't see people's bank accounts or brokerage statements. So we rely on outward appearances to gauge financial success. It is not hard to spot rich people. It is not hard to spot rich people. They often go out of their way to make themselves known. Exercise is like being rich. You think, I did the work and I now deserve to treat myself to a big meal. Wealth is turning down that treat meal and actually burning net calories. It's hard and requires self-control. The world is filled with people who look modest but are actually wealthy and people who look rich who live at the razor's edge of insolvency. Building wealth has little to do with your income or investment returns and lots to do with your savings rate. Wealth is just the accumulated leftovers after you spend what you take in. A high saving rate means saving lower expenses than you otherwise could. And having lower expenses means you're saving so farther than they would if you spend more. Spending beyond a pretty low level of materialism is mostly a reflection of ego approaching income. A way to spend money to show people that you have or had money. When you define savings as the gap between your ego and your income, you realize why many people with decent incomes save so little. People with enduring personal finance success, not necessarily those with high incomes, tend to have a propensity to not give a damn what others think about them. These are the summaries that I'm taking, and some of them are highlighted, and some of them I've taken from websites. Saving can be created by spending less. You can spend less if you desire less. You will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. Saving does not require a goal of purchasing something specific. You can just save for saving's sake. And indeed, you should. Saving is a hedge against life's inevitable ability to surprise the hell out of you at the worst possible moment. Saving without spending goal gives you options and flexibility, the ability to wait and the opportunity to pounce. It gives you time to think. It lets you change your course on your own terms. When you don't have control over your time, you're forced to accept whatever bad luck is thrown your way. This is a hidden return on your savings. A question you should ask as the range of your competition expands is, how do I stand out? Intelligence is not a reliable advantage in a world that's become as connected as ours has. It's flexibility, but a flexibility is. Having more control over your time and options is becoming one of the most valuable currencies in the world. Do not aim to be coldly rational when making financial decisions. Aim to just be pretty reasonable. Acting on investment forecasts is dangerous, but I get why people try to predict what will happen next year. It's human nature. It's reasonable. Things that have never happened before happen all the time. Very important. I'll repeat it. Things that have never happened before happen all the time. History helps us calibrate our expectations, study where people tend to go wrong, and offers a rough guide of what tends to work. But it is not in any way a map of the future. Realizing the future might not look anything like the past is a special kind of skill that is not generally looked high upon by the financial forecasting community. The Intelligent Investor, which is a book, is one of the greatest investing books of all time. But I don't know a single investor who has done well implementing Graham's published formulas. Recent history is often the best guide to the future because it's more likely to include important conditions that are relevant to the future. General things like people's relationship to greed and fear, how they behave under stress, and how they respond to incentives tend to be stable in time. The history of money is useful for that kind of stuff, psychologically speaking. Specific trends, specific trades, specific sectors, specific causal relationships about markets and what people should do with their money are always an example of evolution in progress. Historians are not prophets. You have to give yourself room for error. You have to plan on your plan, not going according to plan. The wisdom is having room for error, is acknowledging that uncertainty, randomness, and chance unknowns are an ever-present part of life. The best way to achieve felicity is to aim low, says Charlie Munger. The idea, 82, the idea is that you have to take risk to get ahead, but no risk that will wipe you out is ever worth taking. A good rule of thumb for a lot of things in life is that everything that can break will eventually break. The biggest single point of failure with money is a sole reliance on paycheck to fund short-term spending needs. Paycheck means salary, ratib, with no savings to create a gap between what you think your expenses are and what they might be in the future. The most important part of every plan is planning on your plan, not going according to plan. We should avoid the extreme ends of financial planning, assuming you'll be happy with very low income or choosing to work endless hours in pursuit of a high one increases the odds that you will one day find yourself at a point of regret. Some of the most miserable workers I've met are people who stay loyal to career all because it is the field they picked when deciding on college major at age 18. The trick is to accept the reality of change and move on as soon as possible. Everything has a price. And the key to a lot of things with money is just figuring out what that price is and being willing to pay it. Like everything else worthwhile, successful investing demands a price. But its currency is not dollars and cents. It's volatility, fear, doubt, uncertainty, and regret. All of which are easy to overlook until you're dealing with them in real time. The question is, why do so many people who are willing to pay the price of cars, houses, food, vacations, try so hard to avoid paying the price of good investment returns? I have observed that not the man who hopes with others despair, but the man who despairs when others hope is admired by a large class of persons as sage. He's talking about a person who's really pessimistic when everybody is happy with money they are spending. There is an iron law in economics. Extremely good and extremely bad circumstances rarely stay that way for long because supply and demand adapt in hard to predict ways. We need to believe we live in a predictable, controllable world. So we turn to authoritative sounding people who promise to satisfy that need. The more you want something to be true, the more likely you are to believe a story that overestimates the odds of it being true. It can't be overstated. There is no greater force in finance than room for error. And the higher the stakes, the wider it should be. I don't know what I don't know, so I'm just as susceptible to explaining the world through the limited set of mental models I have at my disposal. Hindsight, the ability to explain the past, gives us the illusion that the world is understandable. It gives us the illusion that the world makes sense, even when it doesn't make sense. Risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything. Expecting things to be bad is the best way to be pleasantly surprised when they are not. So I think Morgan Housel, who's the author of this book, saying, my investing strategy doesn't rely on picking the right sector or timing the next recession. It relies on a high savings rate, patience, and optimism that the global economy will create value over the next several decades. So he's trying to say, with patience, humility, and empathy to others, with not revealing everything that you have, consistently saving your money and spending it wisely are the best strategies to overcome all of the financial obstacles that you have in life. I think this sums up in these 101 comments the summary of this book. But this book really is worthy of every single dime you spend on to read, understand, process, and apply. Thank you very much. مدرب اللغة وليس خالد.